Good evening, everyone. It's so wonderful to see a standing room only crowd, but I hope those of you who are standing, you'll find some way to rest your legs at some point during the evening. So just want to welcome everyone to the Regis Center for Art. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christine Baumler, and I'm a professor and the current chair of the art department. Before we begin today's program, I'd like to acknowledge that the University of Minnesota is on land that was stolen from the Dakota people by the government of the United States. The treaties of 1805, 1837, and 1851, through which the US government claimed ownership, were riddled with fraud, deception, and coercion. In 1856, the US Senate's Military Affairs Committee concluded that the 1805 treaty was never promulgated, nor can it be now found upon the statute books, like any other treaty, if indeed a treaty it may be called, nor were its stipulations ever complied with on the part of the United States. This information, along with additional supporting evidence documenting the theft of this land, can be found in an article written by Professors Chante Maza and Monica Sims McKay for the Institute of Advanced Study at the University of Minnesota. We are here tonight to celebrate the opening of two exhibitions at the Regis Center for Art. A Tender Spirit of Vital Form, Arlene Burke-Morgan and Clarence Morgan, and that's in the Katherine E. Nash Gallery, and Fred Joel Larson, A Celebration of Life and Art in the Quarter Gallery, which also features the work of David Moore Jr. I want to extend an especially warm welcome to the family and friends of Professor Morgan and Arlene Burke-Morgan. And I'm just going to kind of point you all out here. Thank you so much for coming the distance. And also the family of Fred Joel Larson. And also David Moore and his family. This year, 2023, is the 20th anniversary of this wonderful teaching facility, the Regis Center for Art. It is fitting that we kick off this anniversary year with these two exhibitions, as Professor Morgan and Arlene Burke-Morgan both taught in our department, and Fred Joel Larson and David Moore took courses here. Our presentation in the influx space tonight will focus on the exhibition, A Tender Spirit of Vital Form, which, as I mentioned, is in the Nash Gallery. After concluding this part of the program, please join us inside the Quarter Gallery for the welcoming remarks of Robin Larson, Fred Joel Larson's daughter, and David Moore Jr., who is a close friend of Mr. Larson and who studied with him and who also has works in the Quarter Gallery exhibition. I would also like to thank David Moore and Lenny Moore for their generous gift in the memory of Fred Joel Larson. Their family foundation has established the annual Fred Joel Larson Memorial Teaching Award, which was set up to support and recognize teaching excellence in the art department. So please join me in thanking Lenny and David. A Tender Spirit of Vital Form has been made possible in part with the generous support of Metropolitan Picture Framing of Minneapolis and Wet Paint Artist Materials and Framing of St. Paul. Our good friends Karen Desnick and Les Desnick at Metro Frame, and where are you? Out here somewhere, I hope. And Scott Fairs and Darren Rennie, I know he's here, at Wet Paint, are here this evening. Please join me in thanking them for their generous and deeply appreciated support of the art department and the Katherine E. Nash Gallery. And the Katherine E. Nash Gallery has published this beautiful catalog, which you can purchase from your favorite bookseller. This publication was made possible through a gift to the Department of Art by Dr. Harold Adams. The faculty in our department voted to direct funds from this gift to finance the production of this catalog. An accomplished doctor of medicine who also received his MFA from the department in 1994, Dr. Harold Adams studied with Professor Morgan, as well as many of our faculty. My many thanks to the faculty, and to the memory of Dr. Adams for making this book possible. Professor Clarence Morgan taught in the Department of Art from 1992 to 2022. Professor Morgan has had a distinguished career as an artist and faculty member and was awarded the College of Liberal Arts Dean's Medal. He was also an important leader in our department who served as chair for 2 terms, which is a 6-year commitment. In addition to his many professional accomplishments, Professor Morgan has served as an important mentor to faculty, undergraduate students, and graduate students alike. Anyone who knows Professor Morgan won't be surprised to hear that he keeps in touch with a large number of students and faculty members long after they are no longer in the department. Professor Morgan, where are you? There you are. I'm sorry, I'm going to get a little choked up. Thank you. Your absence is already deeply felt here in the department, but your legacy lives on in those students and faculty that you have so generously mentored, including me. Professor Morgan has promised to come back from Chicago, where he now resides, to do an artist-led tour of the exhibition. And stay tuned for the date, and please join me in our appreciation of Professor Morgan.
If this is my opportunity to say anything, I think Christine's already said it. It's a little difficult to be back here and not be a part of this institution and the faculty that I've spent so many years being close to. And even before we moved into this building here, this was an amazing place for not only me, but my wife, Arlene, who is no longer with us in body, but in spirit, she is here. I was talking to someone earlier in the gallery, and I said, I know a lot of the attention is going to be focused on me because I'm here and she's not, but I really would like to be in the shadows, and I'd like this event to really focus on her spirit and her work, because I think it's outstanding. And it's, you know, if I was half the artist that she was, I'd be something. But she was a powerful woman. And it's unfortunate that it took me so long in my 72 years of living to realize how, how amazing she was. But the show just gives evidence to that. So I want to thank you all for being here, and enjoy the work. Ask me questions. I don't know if I can answer them, but feel free to ask questions to me. And for all the students, past and present, thank you. Thank you so much, because I am a teacher at heart. So I'll continue to do that in some way, shape, or form. So thank you.
Thank you, Clarence. And just finally, enormous thanks goes to our gallery director, Howard Oransky. Howard was the person with the vision for A Tender Spirit, a Vital Form exhibition and the catalog. And through his efforts, which have been truly a labor of love, he has curated a spectacular show. It is absolutely stunning, and also an incredible catalog. And he's also organized an impressive and just an outstanding panel tonight who will discuss the work of Professor Morgan and Arlene Burke-Morgan. So please join me in recognizing Howard Oransky. And now I'm going to hand over the mic to Howard. Thank you.
What a night. Thank you, Christine. We are fortunate to have with us here this evening all 4 of the essayists who contributed their insights to the exhibition catalog: Nyeema Morgan, Bill Gaskins, Tia-Simone Gardner, and Robert Cozzolino. As Christine mentioned, after their presentations, we will continue with the second part of our program in the Quarter Gallery. If you have questions for our speakers, please save them for the reception that follows the program and runs until 8 o'clock this evening.
Okay, that.
Oh, first. Our first speaker is Nyeema Morgan. Nyeema Morgan is the daughter of Arlene Burke-Morgan and Clarence Morgan. She is an interdisciplinary artist based in Chicago. Morgan's conceptually layered works, ranging from large-scale graphite drawings to sculptural installations and print-based media, raise questions about the soft aesthetic power of systems of knowledge, information production, and the mechanics of representation. Her work has been featured in solo and group exhibitions at the Drawing Center, New York, the Studio Museum in Harlem, New York, Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art, Worcester Museum of Art, Philadelphia Art Alliance at the University of the Arts, Grant Walquist Gallery, Portland, Maine, Patron, Chicago, Marlborough Contemporary, New York, Gallery Jean Roche d'Art, Paris, and the Hessel Museum of Art, Annandale and Hudson. Morgan's awards and residencies include a Joan Mitchell Foundation Painters and Sculptors Grant, New York, Lower Manhattan Cultural Council Workspace Residency, New York, Shandaken Storm King Residency, New Windsor, New York, and Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture Residency. Her work has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Art Forum, and the New York Times. Morgan earned an MFA from California College of the Arts and a BFA from the Cooper Union School of Art. Please welcome Nyeema Morgan.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you for that introduction. First, on behalf of my family, my brothers, Aswan and Nairobi Morgan, who couldn't join us today, my dad, Clarence Morgan, and my mother, Arlene Burke-Morgan, I want to extend heartfelt gratitude to the University of Minnesota, the staff and faculty in the art department, and to you, Howard. The exhibition is beautiful. I don't know how you did it or what kind of superhuman powers you possess to be able to organize such a beautiful, thoughtful exhibition, from answering the hundreds of emails and my emails with grace and patiently sorting through, and cataloging decades of work. It's amazing what you have done. The exhibition is stunning, and my mom would be so grateful. As beautiful as the exhibition is, it's also a little strange for me because I grew up amidst many of these works. I witnessed many of them being made. And on some occasions, when my parents were willing, I lent a brushstroke or a pinch of clay here or there. When I was younger, I didn't fully appreciate how special it was to be raised by artist parents. It all seemed rather mundane, being dragged to artist openings or talks, as I'm doing now with my two kids, sitting there patiently. And at times a bit embarrassing. I'm thinking about the time in grade school I had to report that for spring break, my parents took us to the Kohler factory to see how toilets and bathtubs were made. In my childhood, it was lost on me. And it wasn't until I became an artist, a partner to another artist, very predictable, and a parent myself, that I could see my parents and our life together more clearly. Where other artists may have looked to the mythological figures of art history for guidance, my parents were my creative and intellectual exemplars. To quote my mom in a story that Howard told me, she once said, "I'm an artist. That means I'm an artist in everything I do. I'm an artist not only in what I make, but what I think, what I feel, how I move, how I breathe. And that is how they lived. They observed and how they live. They observed so intensely. They made their art with such dedication. And what you're seeing in this exhibition is just a small fraction of the works that they've made over the years. They were and are so incredibly prolific. And so I'd like to read an excerpt from the essay that I wrote for the gorgeous catalog that was made. But first, I want to personally thank all the other essayists, the brilliant artist, educator, and griot, and family friend, Bill Gaskins, who in his essay provided the context for two young artists who grew up in Philadelphia in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, to the immensely talented writer and artist Tia-Simone Gardner, who wrote so beautifully about my father's work, and also out of the kindness of her heart, shepherd all my mother's plants from Minneapolis to Chicago in a beat up U-Haul in the middle of winter. I thank you, my mother thanks you. And to Bob Cozzolino, who to my recollection was one of the few curators that spent time with my mom and her work while she was with us. And I appreciate that. You all have my eternal gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so I'm going to begin by reading a few excerpts, pieces here and there from the essay that I wrote. It's a common conceit that being a parent, or even more egregious, being a mother, is anathema to the life of an artist. In a society where fathers are encouraged to maintain a social and professional life, mothers are expected to retreat into the space of the domestic. As precipitous as the life of an artist is, and as tender as our egos can be, it is easy for artist mothers to slip into the shadows. When my daughter was born, my first child and their first grandchild, my father told me, very surprisingly, after he saw the picture of Zelda, he said, "Whatever you do, don't stop being an artist." Though he said this plainly, calmly, the statement was profound. Years later, the sentiment still moves me to tears. What he didn't know at the time was that swirling among the fear, exhaustion, confusion, embarrassment, and excitement of being a new mother, there was tucked away in the far recesses of my mind, a sense of relief in the thought that motherhood could provide an out, that all my artistic anxiety could be abated by this newfound preoccupation. For the artist mother, our work requires an energy and focus comparable in intensity to that of our care. Amid the beautiful chaos of caring for my two brothers and me, there was a magical space where my mother's ingenuity thrived. In our early years in Greenville, North Carolina, my mother didn't have a studio. The third bedroom in our apartment was designated as my father's painting studio. Her magical space was one shaped by time. It wasn't a physical space, rather it was the confluence of her creative, artistic energy and mothering. These were some of my most vivid childhood memories. My mother commandeering my third grade project with a cutting board and utility knife and a 48-inch T-square in hand to build a tiered pyramid out of cardboard. The time she sat on the carpet with her drawing board, paper, and pastels, fervently drawing us as we were entranced by the television, though I stole glances, watching her more than she realized. Or the time she entered us in a kite building contest because she was convinced that she could engineer the perfect kite out of black garbage bags and scraps of wood. It basically hit the ground as soon as it took off. Undoubtedly, upon reflection on my mother's life, my father imparted the gentle encouragement for me to continue making my art while keeping my family close. Prior to the pandemic, it was more of an emotional struggle to find that confluence between family life and my professional life as an artist. During the last few years, sequestered at home with my family in Chicago for days, weeks, and months on end, I find myself in moments making art alongside my children. Those moments echoed memories of my childhood. Memories of my mother stringing beaded necklaces, nodding raffia, or drawing while we ran circles around her. I recount these memories to articulate that my mother, the artist, didn't have the luxury of time to herself while caring for a baby, a toddler, and a young child, not until we were all in school. Thanks to familial and social support, I have the privilege of time. My parents chose to raise their family away from Philadelphia. They were self-sufficient. which for artists is a noble virtue, but not pragmatic when it comes to raising a family. What their self-reliance crafted was a sort of bubble around our nuclear family to keep us safe, to guide us. We were, after all, living in the South, where my grandmother fled, about which she scarcely spoke about. My parents, having been raised in Philadelphia, were very cautious about our environment. But wherever we were, the value of family wasn't lost on me. A year before she died, my mother also echoed my father's sentiment, telling me to keep my family close. My parents were a beautiful example of that closeness, which was not just about time or space. There was a quality to that closeness. I understood from them how a loving partnership between artists could work. Their relationship was not perfect, if such a thing exists. As I navigate life alongside my partner, my recollection of their life together provides a foundation for learning how to compromise, support, and collaborate with one another. Until my mother's death, my parents had shared a studio for 35 years. Their first studio was bare bones, 800 square foot space in a Butler building in North Carolina, an unheated commercial storage building with concrete floors that became filled to the brim with my father's large paintings, my mother's sculptures, and other storage items. There were no dividing walls in any of their studios over the years, no door to close on the other's work. Everything was in the open. Their barely conceived works, their mistakes, their failures, and experiments were laid bare. Conversely, they could share openly in their triumphs. The only discernible boundary in that shared space was my mother's persistent and methodical labeling of her name, an indelible marker on all her supplies. Rulers, paper, hammers, books, drills, etc. This may have had more to do with her upbringing in a household with 3 sisters than my father's communal habits. My parents never compartmentalized their life. Their art practice and life were and are inextricably woven together. I can't remember a time when there was ever a distinction. There was no space where art was not present. My brothers and I were suffused in it: literature, music, poetry, craft, fine art. We might have caught the occasional "don't bother me," but what they were making or reading or listening to was never hidden from us. My father's record collection and mother's library of books filled milk crates that were stacked floor to ceiling in the living room. Richard Wright, Toni Morrison, Shakespeare, Doug Carn, Thelonious Monk. I am in many proud and complex ways my parents' daughter. I don't remember making an explicit decision to become a visual artist. Yet I spent my entire childhood making things, excited and encouraged by what I had seen of their lives in and outside of our home. The curiosity, the thrill of the unexpected, the camaraderie, the reverie. Even after I left for college, I often visit and watch them with silent awe, the same way they'd marvel at the sky ablaze with colors at sunset. As my mother would say, I was seeing them. I saw how they turned the trials and tribulations of a decades-long partnership into tenderness, much like how they shaped form out of raw material with agility, consideration, and time. How they made space for each other when there was very little room, both literally and figuratively. That kind of generosity was laid on a foundation of empathy, which was hard-won, but it shaped for me an understanding and way of participating in the world with a keen sense of observation, patience, and sense of obligation to one another. These have become the values that underlie my creative practice as well. I am eternally grateful to my parents and forever encouraged by the beauty of their partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Nyeema. Our next speaker is Bill Gaskins. Bill Gaskins is a thoughtful producer of photography, video, and nonfiction writing that offers viewers and readers engaging aesthetic impact, knowledge, and meaning. The range of his creative and scholarly work merges the visual and liberal arts through his interests in the history of art, photography, cinema, and American and African-American studies. The Lives of Black People in the United States, Depictions of Race in Visual Culture, and Their Complexities and Contradictions inform and inspire his valuable contributions to conversations on these topics. Essays and photographs by Bill Gaskins appear in journals, magazines, anthologies, and exhibition catalogs, including the Journal of Contemporary African Art, Society of Contemporary Craft, Artsy, Aperture, Nature, and the New Yorker magazine. In addition, solo and group exhibitions at major venues, including the Crocker Art Museum, Brooklyn Museum, Detroit Institute of Arts, and the Smithsonian Institution reflect his relevance as a contemporary artist. Gaskins is also known for his impactful teaching and innovative curricular vision. He was awarded the Watts Prize for Faculty Excellence by Cornell University Department of Art in 2016 and received a University Distinguished Teaching Award from the New School in 2011. He is currently a professor and the founding director of the MFA program in Photography and Media and Society at Maryland Institute College of Art. Please welcome Bill Gaskins.
I want to echo what was said earlier about this man right here. There's a bit of a side note. What happens in university and college, departments of art and museums has even greater relevance and importance now, given assaults on knowledge taking place at this moment. So there's no small thing you're doing here, and I appreciate being part of this. All week long, I've been hearing Arlene telling me, you better drop a word in here. So I'm gonna do that. Thomas Jefferson wrote the following in his notes on the state of Virginia, ironically published in Philadelphia in 1783, about whom he called, quote, the Blacks, end of quote. Ironically, as I said, it's published in the city of Philadelphia. In general, quote, their existence appears to participate more of sensation than reflection. Their love is ardent, but it kindles the senses only, not the imagination. But never yet could I find that a Black had uttered a thought above the level of plain narration. Never even see an elementary trait of painting or sculpture. End of quote. While Jefferson did note the work of Phyllis Wheatley, he did so with disrespect not worth repeating here. The point being, the superior ability of human beings to love and imagine in the world is solely in the minds and the hearts of white people. I want to remind everyone that 30 years before Notes on the State of Virginia was published, Benjamin Banneker built the first wooden clock in North America from love and imagination. Too many days before 1783, when Notes of Virginia was published, to 2023, are filled with some version of this idea of who Black people are. But increasingly, these ideas are not limited to white people. The picture of Sammy Sosa before and after his skin lightening treatments, as well as the billions spent on skin lightening procedures in Africa, China, Korea, and India, make clear unlearning the myth of white supremacy is a multi-ethnic necessity in the 21st century. What Arlene and Clarence faced in Philadelphia through the news media during the 1950s and 60s was amplification of Thomas Jefferson's view of Blackness. Philly was a 4-newspaper town: the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Philadelphia Bulletin, the Philadelphia Daily News, and the Black-owned and founded Philadelphia Tribune. The content of the 3 white-owned newspapers reflected most of the conclusions of the 1968 Kerner Commission report, officially titled National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, which was a multi-week New York Times bestseller to the tune of over 600,000 copies purchased. Under the section of the report headed "The Media and Race Relations" is the following quote: "Our second and fundamental criticism is that the news media have failed to analyze and report adequately on racial problems in the United States, and as a related matter, to meet the Negro's legitimate expectations in journalism. The media report and write from the standpoint of a white man's world. The ills of the ghetto, the difficulties of life there, the Negro's burning sense of grievance are seldom conveyed. Slights and indignities are part of the Negro's daily life, and many of them come from what he now calls the white press, a press that repeatedly, if unconsciously, reflects the biases, the paternalism, the indifference of white America. This may be understandable, but it is not excusable in an institution that has the mission to inform and educate the whole of society," end of quote. So a group of predominantly white male elected officials came to the conclusion that images and storytelling in the matter of Black lives matter on the horizon of the 1970s. But there was the question of how the Black mass would respond to this. From Philadelphia, my essay for the exhibition catalog, I wrote the following, quote, "Changing the representations of Black people in American culture required Black artists in fiction and nonfiction, writing, cinema, poetry, and the visual arts to play a role in the process of Black people changing their minds. Clarence Morgan and Arlene Burke were among those people in the process of changing their minds and developing into people who would inspire others to change their minds as well. Philadelphia emerged in this moment as a vital site for the production of visual, material, media, literary, and performance culture by and about Black people, called the Black Arts Movement. There was so much to engage the minds of those walking the path of Black radical imagination through the arts in Philadelphia," end of quote. Now, one of my favorite songs from the idiom of gospel music practiced by the great Mahalia Jackson is "How I Got Over." Aretha does a pretty good job too. As I've been thinking about the creative life of Arlene Burke-Morgan and Clarence Morgan over the last year at least, I've been compelled to curl the tone of exclamation of the song into a question mark. In my thoughts, on Arlene and Clarence by asking, how did they get over? Arlene would remind us that in the book of Matthew, in the King James Version of the Bible, is written, ye shall know them by their fruits. So part of the answer to my question lies in the works of this exhibition and the ideas behind each of those works that contradict the words written by Jefferson, printed in the city where Arlene, Clarence, and I were born. These fruits speak in color, design, clay and fire, wood, metal, and an assortment of technologies that have brought these ideas into physical images and form. But they don't tell us how they got over. The words of another artist from Philadelphia, Sarah Jasmine Griffin, provides the answer I want us to consider today. From Read Until You Understand the Profound Wisdom of Black Life and Literature, she writes, suppose what we call God is nothing more than a conception of human beings loving each other, treating each other with mutual respect. Suppose we create and live in something divine each time we act lovingly and respectfully toward each other. Suppose human beings are the only vehicles and vessels of grace and love. This kind of love is the basis of justice. This love is the conduit of freedom. This love is power beyond wealth, greed, and physical might. End of quote. I got even closer to the answer of how they got over in the course of a conversation with Nyeema Morgan, the firstborn and the firstborn son of Arlene and Clarence, through this story he told me. I did the dirty work at this summer camp in Asheville, North Carolina. I cleaned the grounds, worked the kitchen, doing everything there, including dishwashing. I was also camp counselor to the homeless children who attended kids with problems, 17, 16, 18 years old. These kids would come off the bus. We had to take them to the pantry to see that there's food at the camp to assuage their food insecurity. We didn't want them to overeat or hoard food in fear that their next meal would be days instead of hours away. I decided to give them a space to speak their mind at different points during the day. There was this elk horn in the camp space. I gave it to the first boy next to me and told him, speak your mind for 5 minutes. The elk horn would be passed from one boy to the next. It was the worst mistake I made. I'm still not over it. No child should have to ever go through what they shared. I called my dad and said, I can't do this. These children are broken. And I know they're going back to the hell they're sharing with me. I don't know what I'm doing is hurting them or helping them. My dad listened to me. Then he calmly told me, you know, he didn't have YouTube or Google to come up with a response. Your job is not to know if you're being effective. Your job is to be there. You shall know them by their fruits. This kind of love is the basis of justice. This love is the conduit of freedom. This love is power beyond wealth, greed, and physical might. In her recent Bomb magazine interview, Nyeema Morgan tells this story. When I was younger, my mother would teach me how to bake, and she refused to let me use the electric mixer. I'd beg, "Mommy, my arm's tired. I feel like my arm's going to fall off." She would snap at me. "No, you got to feel the resistance of the material." Everything she did was so hypersensory. So even in those things that she was teaching me, there was a deep attention paid to all aspects of an experience, which aligned with another one of her dictums. There's a distinction between seeing and looking. That's something that's definitely embedded in my practice. And then she taught me how to hammer a nail with just one hit. That kind of stuff. And how to cut through cardboard with a utility knife without cutting into myself. So I owe her quite a bit in terms of my understanding of material, my relationship to it. She was in such awe of material. This kind of love is the basis of justice. This love is the conduit of freedom. This love is power beyond wealth, greed, and physical might. So, with that said, I hope to be here with all of you when the exhibition of the creative fruits of Nyeema Morgan and Mike Cloud is staged. When we learn even more about Clarence and Arlene, when the sequel of their love story shows out. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Our next speaker is Tia-Simone Gardner. Tia-Simone Gardner is an artist, educator, and Black feminist scholar from Fairfield, Alabama, working primarily with photography, moving image, and drawing. Her practice is deeply grounded in ideas of ritual, iconoclasm, and geography. Gardner holds an MFA in interdisciplinary practices and time-based media from the University of Pennsylvania, and a PhD in feminist studies from the University of Minnesota. She currently resides in St. Paul. Please welcome Tia-Simone Gardner.
Hi. Yeah. Wow. That was a word from the Right Reverend Bill Gaskins. I mean, hey, I believe what I was gonna say was like I did not get to meet Arlene in life, but you will know them by their fruit. I actually met Nyeema before I met Clarence, and the generosity, honesty, love that just comes off her also comes off her father, and I know came from her mother. I have a lot of gratitude for being able to even stand here. I have not known Clarence that long, and I was not one of Clarence's students, unfortunately. But I've got to know and study with him in the short amount of time that we have had together over the last 2-3 years. And I see one of his students is standing in the back, Miss Caroline Kent. But what I was gonna say is that that generosity, I think I'm really grateful because you don't always get to be present with people in their life transitions. And Clarence just moved to Chicago. It was a heavy push to do it, having had so many years here with a studio, a home, a life. And I'm extremely grateful that you allowed me to participate in that transition. So I'm going to read a little bit about Clarence from the time that I did get to spend with him in his studio and having many conversations. I'm an artist also, and it is a privilege to get to write about another artist and their work. And Clarence is also a writer, as some of you may know. So standing in the middle of his studio, which feels both like an artist's working space and an archive, we lingered over a sprawling mass of notebooks, the notebooks of Clarence Morgan. As I take in the scene, he says, "I've got a sample of my journals." By sample, he really meant only the last year and a half or so of his life, and it could fill alone a medium-sized box. He continued, "My thought life is intricately connected to my creative life. I don't call myself a writer, but I do record my thoughts. I've been doing it for probably over 30 years. And if any of you have visited Clarence in his studio or in his home, he has many, 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 many books of writing of his own." These conversations formed a kind of ritual and intellectualism for Morgan. Many mornings, he begins the day with a note. He comes to the notes while taking a break, and the notes allow him to sustain a dialogue with his work over stretches of time as the work changes. In disclosing this conversation with himself, Morgan is describing what we might call a kind of study, an ongoing, largely, but not exclusively private dialogue that keeps him engaged in the process of constructing his work. He's not alone in this quiet activity. Jack Whitten's published notebooks, Notes from the Woodshed, follow the artist's exploration of his work and contain insightful writings to himself, sometimes poetic, sometimes scientific. Morgan, like Whitten, is an abstractionist, and his approach to his work has been grounded in his thoughtfulness, which is well documented in his writings, but also in his material choices, process, and I would argue in a kind of aliveness. Kobena Mercer writes, "As a uniquely modern development that has irrevocably transformed habitual ways of seeing, thinking, and feeling, abstraction was never a discrete method, style, or genre, so much as a protean shape-shifting rupture that questions the very nature and definition of art itself. To understand abstraction as it is articulated by Mercer and as it is articulated in the practice of Morgan, it is helpful to think of abstraction as a language, not exceptionally, as Mercer points out, a method, style, or genre. It is a grammar, simultaneously fixed and unfixed, stable and unstable, narrative and non-narrative. This ability to move and change while being completely still gives abstraction a quality of an anima, or as Tia-Simone might say, it's got life." When I think about the paintings and drawings of Morgan, I think about livingness, in particular, Black livingness. Sorry. It's so alive, it lost my place. Black livingness, in this essay, thinking about Black livingness, I want to draw together some notes that Morgan and I have written both separately and together about abstraction and the aliveness of things, about Black abundance. The writings of Kelly Jones, Kevin Kwashi, Tina Camp, and Fred Moten helped me to stitch together some ideas about the artist's career and his abundant practice. I placed text from a recent interview with Clarence Morgan alongside the essayists mentioned above to illuminate aspects of Morgan's practice that feel important to how we see and study his work. Morgan says, "My studio practice can be loosely described or explained as an intuitive search for a way to open hidden dimensions within my thought life." Black study and Black aliveness. Kevin Kwashi writes in Black Aliveness or Poetics of Being, "I am trying to articulate the aesthetics of aliveness. What I want is the freeness of a Black world where Blackness can be of being, where there is no argument to be made, where there is no speaking to or against an audience, because we all are the audience there is. We are all the audience there is. And as such, the text work can manifest an invitation to study and to becoming for the Black one." Morgan's paintings as text are an articulation of aliveness, an invitation to open conceptual space to study. In an email poetically titled "A Relationship Between Thinking and Thought," this is literally an email Clarence sent to me, and this is how he thinks. Clarence wrote, I think also writing to himself, "Thought has no beginning, but exists only as a fragment of time and space that is occasionally captured in drawing and or painting. From my vantage point, the apparatus of thought is neither linear nor circular, but a series of interrupted forms or layered thought notes hovering in space," end quote. As I sit with the thought notes from our exchanges, they continue to open up onto new connections, new ways of thinking for me. Over the course of our conversations, Morgan and I have talked many times about the differences between thinking and thought. Thinking as a verb, to turn over in the mind, meditate on, ponder over, consider. Thought, a single act or product of thinking, an item of mental activity, a thing that is in the mind. We are not completely separable. They are not completely separable, but they are different activities of the one mind and one body. Morgan lives somewhere in the in-between, oscillating dialogically in his work from the activity of thinking and to the coming to being of thought, hovering on a habit of study. Fred Moten describes study as a type of sociality. We can think of it as intellectual congregation that is affirming and life-giving. Study, he writes, marks the incessant and irreversible intellectuality of practice. And in abundance, again, Morgan writes, I'm looking for conceptual spaces where work structure is less rigid and where absolutes are rare. Morgan's work is an active practice of study. In his studio, we talked about both his training, the formal training he received as a student at Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, or PAFA, and his informal training, which he received from his contemporaries and beyond the academy. At PAFA, classical painting was paramount, with an institutional genealogy that contains artists such as Thomas Eakins, Mary Cassatt, and Henry Osawa Tanner. PAFA provided Morgan with a kind of appreciation for the enormous histories of painting and opened the possibility that he could draw himself into them. Morgan was taught to value technical skill, which translated in his formal education into representational painting. His contemporaries were notable painters like James Brantley, Charles Searles, Ferris West, and Barclay Hendricks, whose work primarily fall into different genres of representation, although they're all interlocutors. They are not only students of the same school of learning, they all emerged at a moment of tidal social shifts in the US that drew artists into questions around significance and risks of representing Black life. If Blackness is both a phenomenon of the senses that also functions as a language, as Stuart Hall suggests, then abstraction is not a turn away from these questions, but rather a place to problematize how we understand the senses, particularly visual relationships. Morgan began to shift his practice at this time to engage with other histories, other ways of seeing and being, and form new social worlds between himself and his paintings. The sociality that seeps from his work is socially with the self, and yet it is a sociality that performs a radical engagement with the self that cannot be itself alone. That is, Morgan's work is not purely autogenous, but it is always in dialogue with the thinking and thoughtfulness of others. With the opticality of Al Loving, the materiality of Sam Gilliam, the spatiality of Joe Overstreet. When I asked Morgan how he found his own path in his work, the path that would lead him from a preoccupation with portraiture toward hard-edged, color-filled abstraction, he said, "The question," correcting me, more succinctly is, when did I move from this kind of work to abstraction? I was looking for freedom, freedom to let me go. Where was I going to go? I didn't know, but abstraction seemed to be at least someplace away from my training, like a child rebelling. This is 1973, and while in dialogue with and as a response to his training in and out of school, Morgan teaches himself something new from his own rebellion, invention, and groove. What he forms is an ongoing relationship to Black study. Black study, that is, the act of moving, playing, working with another, a commitment to the act of rigorous, persistent participation. He works with an interest not in the aboutness of each painting, but in their muchness. In the process of constructing each work is in itself generative. I'm interested in the ways that Morgan's work as non-objective, non-narrative images bring us to study. We do not so much see his work as we witness it. As we witness, we are compelled to practice in the kind of social relation that Moten describes, but also in the kind of visual relation. In A Black Gaze, Tina Camp writes, "It is a Black gaze that shifts the optics of looking at to a politics of looking with, through, and alongside another. It is a gaze that requires effort, exertion, a shift that she describes as the precise shift that feels important to how we understand Morgan's paintings. But it is also a tenuous connection that I'm attempting to make here. Camp, rightfully so, focuses her theory of the gaze around representational practices, particularly photography, filmmaking, and performance. But Morgan's work lives concretely in the genre of abstraction. Yet it feels right and important to consider the idea of the gaze alongside his work. When we hear the word gaze, we often understand it as looking relationships between humans, those who can return the gaze. It lurks only between particular kinds of images, specifically portraiture, figurative, or cinematic pictures. Representation structures that signify animacy, aliveness, and humanness are understood as image, which then attaches abstraction to ideas of non-image and stasis. But what about the ontologic life of non-representation, non-narrative objects, images, and matter? What if the paintings were, in other words, alive? Camp describes aliveness as vibration, as time, frequency, temporal, sonic, kinetic, haptic, visual. Attended to frequency is, she writes, at its core, a practice of attunement, an attunement to waves, rhythms, and cycles of return that create new formations and new points of departure. Witnessing Morgan's work is a phenomenological encounter with frequency. We are always encountering something new, and we can feel it. Morgan says, "Although I'm not sure of the meaning of each painting, I do know they possess a desire to break free from a cleverly constructed and deceptively limiting account of who I am as an individual. This action and attempt to break free is the nature of abstraction," end quote. In his paintings, drawings, sketchbooks, and writings, Morgan sustains a dialogue with time, with rhythm. The paintings vibrate and change while managing to remain deceptively still. The images are fragments of thought, connected but also free and uncoupled from one another. There is no singular or clear beginning. There is no end, only duration, interval, repetition, and fragment. These compilations of fragments without beginning or end are connected to the experimentation with improvisation on which Morgan has drawn over the course of his life, including a range of interests in African textiles, Navajo weaving, jazz, Japanese metalwork, and geometry. He is drawn literally and figuratively from the gestures of the body and a deepening relationship to physical and mental connectedness. Morgan says, I think there's a whole thing about doing things by hand and the relationship between the body, mind, and spirit. If we just regulate everything over to the mind, then we lose a big part of what it is to be human, end quote. Morgan's drawing methods, negotiated with drawing tools, bring forms to life. I've written elsewhere, because he allowed me to, about his recent body of paintings, linear fiction, that we get to witness some parts of an image's aliveness. Across the work, we watch and wait for the images to calm themselves, for the artist's hand and mind to slow down, and yet it doesn't. The joy in the drawings is to connect it to an apprehension about getting lost in the pace of the work. But what feels like an out of sync time where we give up measures of control, we can actually find a groove of our own in the polyrhythms of the unindividuated lines. In the movement of the paintings, we do not have to idly look at them. We can watch them as though they may change, because they will. We can feel the visual frequencies in the image and not feel the need to withdraw our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Tia. Our last speaker is Robert Cozzolino. Robert Cozzolino, the Patrick and Amy Butler Curator of Paintings at the Minneapolis Institute of Art, curates collaboratively in partnership with artists, colleagues, and broad communities. Quote, starting where you are, unquote, is critical to his practice. Knowing the immediate context and deeper history of the place in which he works. It also means working with humility and accepting that there is much yet to learn from others. Dr. Cozzolino is drawn to artists that make work about the full range of human experience, especially those who aspire to visually express the intangible, states of consciousness, and a full range of emotions. Although he has worked on topics from the 19th and 20th centuries, he regularly works with contemporary artists in examining history. Born and raised in Chicago, he studied at UIC before completing graduate studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. His publications include Supernatural America, The Paranormal in American Art, 2021, World War I and American Art, 2016, Peter Bloom, Nature and Metamorphosis, 2014, and David Lynch, The Unified Field, also 2014. First trained as a musician, he has played free improvised music as a percussionist since 1993. Please welcome Robert Cozzolino.
Thank you, Howard, and thank you, Nyeema and Clarence and Arlene for inviting me into studios, to allowing me to be here and honor you with this work. I wasn't a student of Clarence's. I'm a friend. Before I was a friend, I was an admirer. I worked at the Pennsylvania Academy for 11 and a half years as a curator before moving here. And looking around in storage, as curators tend to do, to see what's not being put on display that should. I found a 1975 painting by this person named Clarence Morgan and hung it in several different contexts. And later, when a colleague named Julian Robson started as a curator there, he and I had looked at Clarence's other work and thought we need a new work by Clarence because this guy's work is varied. So we wound up buying a 2005 painting called Cities of Tomorrow that's black and white and hung that. And I don't know if Clarence had known that at all, but when it was announced that I got the new job at MIA in 2015, he was going to move here in 2016, the first person who contacted me to welcome me to Minneapolis was Clarence. He found my contact information and sent this very warm email saying, when I get here, he'd introduced me to people in the art department, and that's what he did. And so I've met lots of artists through Clarence in Minneapolis, and my time here has felt very welcome, in part because of him. Art history has often avoided considering artists' personal spirituality, though this is slowly changing. Despite a more curious and open art world, there is still skepticism towards artists who do not fit certain expectations of spirituality or who made art that asserts pious goals. Arlene Burke-Morgan made icons of faith through which expressing herself became the truest gift of love to her God and to viewers. Arlene had a complex and engaged spiritual life that illuminated her art and gave it meaning. She was forthright about Jesus Christ being the source of this spirituality, the spiritually driven worldview, especially later in life. It's possible to see expressions of the spiritual in all aspects of her work and to find it expressed in surprising ways. She lived a life of making that was integral to everything she did. Her animated hands were perpetually at work, making all manner of jewelry, bags, hats, a wide range of wearable things, and each was carefully composed in an unexpected combination of textures and materials. The many drawings of her son Nairobi as a child revealed that she was constantly observing and creating while he played. Her surroundings became a perpetual studio. Her life was her source material. That eye for inspiration in the everyday included her distinctive personal style. This 1973 photograph of Arlene and Nairobi in South Philly gives a sense of how at 23, she was self-assured and radiant, a striking presence conveyed with just a few fashion notes. Her dress anticipates the polyphonic patterns that she would paint later in life. Both she and her dazzling dress and Nairobi in his crisp, bright outfit beautify the city merely by being there. Arlene trained at Philadelphia's Moore College of Art and the Tyler School at Temple University, earning an MFA later from East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. She received many awards and fellowships and exhibited in groundbreaking exhibitions, having attracted the discerning eyes of peers such as Winnie Owens Hart and curator and art historian Lowry Stokes Sims. Yet, she had no need for the popularity that so drives artists and to which they are often told to aspire. Quote, "Truly, I'm influenced by my day-to-day surroundings," she told an interviewer, eager to know her opinion of art world trends. Arlene creatively enriched and was fed by the relationship she had with Clarence and her daughter Nyeema, artists with whom she shared an intimate understanding. She and Clarence had stated together, quote, "Naturally, we share many of the same values, dreams, and visions, which, needless to say, contribute to our compatibility as an artist couple." Their work shares an underlying tone, a clairvoyance that animates a call and response between forms in their paintings, a function of the symbiosis that happens between soul partners, a shared language and display of what each valued. Likewise, Arlene found it immensely meaningful to share art with Nyeema. Quote, "I do not seek other artists to get their opinions concerning my work," she asserted. "I do share with my daughter, who is an artist of whom I hold in high esteem. She is such a part of me that sometimes I fail to see beyond her being my daughter, for she has become a dear and precious friend." Arlene cherished family relationships and was aware of the broader connection to ancestors, relations, and even the future. In her many self-portraits across media, she explored a more complex recognition of selfhood beyond appearances. about her large drawing Works of Love, which is shown here, made between 1996 and 97, which includes numerous frontal portraits defined with a range of colors and different sizes. She noted, quote, "When I look at this drawing, I see history. I see my life before me. This is not just me, this is my family. Sometimes one drawing represents my sister, another time my mother," end quote. Arlene was conscious that our deep family histories make us who we are and hold us in our lives. We echo and reflect who came before us and are shaped by who we learn from in the present. An early graphite drawing shows Arlene's ability to convey her own personality while carefully rendering her features. Brow lowered, eyes turned up, she scrutinizes herself in a mirror. Her expression is one of contemplation, a look that seeks to understand. Arlene made many images that have this straightforward connection to what she observed in a mirror. Together, they express the multiplicity of identity and mark time. She also used her appearance to express ideas about generations that lie ahead of her and behind. These drawings often present portrait fragments cropped to the eyes and top of her head. She once remarked, quote, "As a child, I was taught to always look at the eyes. Only then would you know what a person meant." The drawings are variations on this admonition. Viewers confront and then sit with these gazes, reading for cues to emotion, intention, and thoughts. Because Arlene situated the eyes within portraits, though obscured, and we see the tops of their heads, we might connect interior and exterior life through this. While drawing might have been a constant companion and method for Arlene, she was also an innovative ceramicist, working in clay on an extraordinary range of sculptural form. And Through Me from 1981 shows how Arlene skillfully combined materials to transform a sculptured vessel into something alive. It is at once a portrait, perhaps based on Arlene's face, yet open-ended and symbolic. The figure is presented with her eyes closed, asleep, dreaming, or in quiet contemplation. Arlene has worked the clay surface of the face to suggest ritual scarification or allude to other forms of body modification and adornment, including painting. Her hair is a lively eruption of rust-colored feathers. Cowrie shells frame a square opening in the body, and this combination of organic materials imbues the clay with life. Color and connections to the other elements, wind and air, combine with clay's inherent attributes of air, of earth and fire. She's made a living thing, and with the open space, a sacred place. Rather than a void, the opening presents possibility, something to fill with experience, a space where light and breath passes. It's the expectant future. In Siren Song from 1982, Arlene expanded ways to embellish and activate the pit-fired clay face that is her focus. Alive, awake, mouth open to generate sound, this figure radiates power and authority. Her painted face suggests that she is a priestess or guardian, head ringed with tight coils and a mane of loose strands. Her beauty is also unnerving, perhaps because of the association with tales of the siren, luring voyagers to their doom. Is she a deceptive spirit, her voice and the jingling bells a trap? Or does she serve a protective need, apotropaic, warding off and keeping misfortune at bay? Her mouth releases breaths and yet is silent, and in that space between utterances, the unspoken might reveal more. Arlene made numerous variations on this expression using her own features. She photographed them in her studio in groups, and in those congregations, they appear alive. Each has its own personality and take on an oracular presence. They chant, perhaps pray, mourn through lament, and declare the outcomes of divination. These sculptures are the closest Arlene came to suggesting an Afrocentric aesthetic that was explored by her older peers in Philadelphia, such as Barbara Bullock on the left with Guardian Spirit Altar, which was shown at MIA earlier last year, and Charles Searles on the right. That's a dancing figure from after he returned from his crescent that took him to Africa around 1973 or 74. They have a power that transcends their materiality and seem to be a holding place for spirits. They could just as well serve as a visible manifestation of her inner life, aspects of identity and connections to past and future selves. They gesture to emit sound, but are capable only of silence. Perhaps we fall short of hearing the frequencies of the spirit. As the theologian and writer John S. Mabiti observed, spirits are invisible, but they make themselves visible to human beings. They are seen in the corporate belief of their existence, yet people experience their activities, and many folk stories tell of spirits described in human forms, activities and personalities. If even an element of exaggeration that is an essential part shows that description. Because they are invisible, they are thought to be ubiquitous, so that a person is never sure where they are or where they are not. In these clay vessels, bodies and spiritual containers, Arlene made figures to allow multiple meanings, absorbing this experience so that viewers might bring to them elastic in their associations, and therefore well suited to an array of devotional systems that we might find relevant to them. In an extraordinary series of colorful drawings that Arlene started around 2000, underlying forms resemble growing and breeding cells, microscopic creatures and clusters of colonies generating new life. They appear on small sheets of paper, which Arlene installed and arranged in grids, designing them to fit together in clusters of 25 or more. Each individual panel is a complete and dazzling image, but it contributes to a composite whole, visible from a distance as an ovoid arrayed across several pieces. These works are a complex imaginative mosaic and reveal the control and invention that Arlene could sustain in color, space, and pattern and form. They gesture toward the components of our DNA while conjuring visions of the cosmos in deep space. And recently, when I went back to these, I was thinking how much she would have loved seeing those pictures from the James Webb Telescope, because they really feel like these drawings. Arlene's investment in images that express life in unusual ways, at the cosmic level, expressed in the unseen, and going deep into our bodies, was part of her ongoing revelation of faith. It's important to understand what that meant. Arlene attested that she underwent a transformation in 1992. Quote, "Having received the Holy Spirit in March of 1992, I now realize my work has been a catharsis of my spiritual growth in Christ Jesus, a growth of which I can no longer conceal. It is written, no man, when he has lighted a candle, covereth with a vessel or putteth it under a bed, but setteth on a candlestick, that they which enter in may see the light. I thought I knew him, but now I realize I only knew of him. Having rededicated my life to Christ and seeing the Lord's face daily, I believe my work is not an end in itself. Through seeking the will of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I have found joy and peace. My hands are his. To his glory, the forms evolve." End quote. Arlene's work of this period is inseparable from her devotional practice. Her process and the images she made were a form of prayer. Works such as this one, Enjoy the Ride from 2012, revel in the joy and exhilaration of life in all of its twists and turns, expressed as dancing lines that overlap and set off popping blasts of color. Bright circles of solid blues and turquoise bop and buzz against heavy concentric rings of orange, yellow, and red. Each mark assertive, yet balanced against the whole. It is the image of a divine love made over many hours of repetitive dotting, dabbing, and laying of lines. While there is no overt Christian or religious imagery here, the veneration is in the work, in the attention, the craft. Arlene was clear, however, that she made abstractions that are of Christ. She called the King James Bible the most creative book for me, she said. Prayer was the key to her creative life. Taking time, watching, listening, and waiting for a moment to begin is how she described being in her studio. She wrote, quote, "There is a peace that settles on me like a dove, and I continue to watch, wait, and listen. My journal is open to the place where I left off the day before. It's comfortable in the studio. Thank you, Father God, for this time in the studio. A smile arises on my face. It's time to begin, to continue what was started in the studio several days ago. Take your time, there is no rush. A wall, an endless wall, walking through, in and out of shapes of color. I see with my inner eye, and then I do. The work continues. These principles and practices appear in Breath of Life from 2011. Arlene composed it with a multiplicity of concentric rings in circles like pools of light that gradually appear like emerging stars in a moonless night. They have a slow intensity, gradually building to crescendos, like visual hymns, color and shape as the notes, their tone and duration overlapping to form chords and durations of notes, of harmonies. Even her titles aim at parables of devotion. Revelation, open door, beyond the veil, then he came. Propagation, prophecy, peace in the valley, seasons of blessings, seeds of peace, imagination of healing, seeds of faith, spirit catcher, suffer the little children, his peace is upon me, field of praise, fire in the sky, light of life. I sing praises to you, Lord. It is possible to see Arlene's later abstract paintings as simultaneously fulfilling several needs. They were a form of prayer, ritual, and devotion. They may have also served as a focusing medium through which her consciousness and awareness was made awake. They may have meant for her an expression of love and spirituality that, when shared with others, had a healing and uplifting capacity. All of this is possible, and it would be part of many kinds of devotional practices within which images function. Arlene's underlying commitment to faith and revelation inspired her to explore new modes and expressions of self. Her curiosity about and versatility with a range of materials might be seen as parts of a total body of work that expressed her faith in the divine. No final product, but constant growth and becoming. For her, revelation was contained in the act of making as expressions of spirit, hers and perhaps the Holy Spirit. Her later extractions, with their rhythm of circles and rings and dots, ovoid patches and beads and layers, might relate as points of light radiating out, overlapping, joining lives and spirits. Clarence sensed that her faith made her more attuned to the needs and experiences of those around her. He wrote to me, Arlene relied on scripture to see her through difficult times and always prayed for our children and me. Arlene was very perceptive and could sense people immediately, particularly those in the grip of darkness, pain, uncertainty, etc. She picked up on when people were struggling over something and offered prayer when she felt spiritually directed to do so. Arlene was a woman of enormous spiritual wisdom, end quote. Arlene left behind unusual icons of faith, devotional imagery completely in her own voice, one true to her experience of love and of God. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. This concludes the first part of our program. Please join us for the second part of the program in the Quarter Gallery, just across the lobby, where we will hear comments from the family and friends of Fred Joel Larson and have some pie in his honor. Thank you.